It's time for another lap around the track with all the latest in motorsports interviews. Sometimes we get bent feelings, but we can't wait for the Bent Fender Podcast with your hosts, Nathan Conway and Wes Llewellyn.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of the Bent Fender Podcast. I'm Nathan Porkchop Conway. With me, as always, Wes, Detroit Iron Llewellyn. Buddy, welcome back to the show. I don't know where you went, but
was going to ask if I went somewhere.
Well, we hadn't done a show in a week, so
it's been a couple days.
Yeah, that's right. So we're back in the saddle again. The sheet didn't even really get cooled off since we've done this last time. Man, awesome show last time with Blake Hillard, and got another freaking awesome show today. And I'll tell you, we're going old school racing again. Mark Stallings, man, he's coming on here, a long-time personal friend of mine and a competitor. I've raced with him several times, watched him race more than that, and man, I love getting the old school guys on here too. You know, I love hearing the new stories, but like hearing those old stories, man. You know, stuff that I remember from the quote-unquote heyday. You know, back when I started racing, and you know, Mark has always been a very, very tough competitor, man, and always a great driver out there. Super quiet most of the time. You never hear a word out of him, you know, and he lets his driving do the talking, and that was what was always cool to me.
Well, I think you're probably not the only one who is excited to hear this episode. I think that's this is hearkening back to why we started this, is to make sure we capture all these stories, and it's great that we go out to the races and see the drivers that are running, you know, currently week after week, right. But the guys who have stepped away and have boxed up their cars, or sold them, or parked them in a ditch somewhere. It's good to hear their stories, because without their exploits and their adventures on the track, back in the day, a lot of these new guys wouldn't be here.
That's absolutely right, man. And the Stallings family, Curtis, his brother, raced, and Mark has raced, and now Curtis's son is currently racing in the I guess they're in a Rusty Boat bomber. So the Stallings family, Stallings brothers racing. I remember that. Those shirts used to be around, and you'd always see them with the 67 and the 97 on there, Chevy bow tie symbol, and a lot of times it said Rabbit Racing Engines. And hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to Mark here in a few minutes about that. I'm going to ask him about old Bobby Daniels, Rabbit, and some of the people that have have gone on since, maybe Tommy Brooks, and some people like that. Man, that's going to be a cool deal. I can't wait to ask him about that. And just some of the old stories and some of the funny things that he remembers, and some of the crazy things that happened around Windy Hollow. I remember Mark. He raced both on at Windy Hollow. He's raced at Kentucky Motor Speedway, man. I mean, asphalt and dirt alike, and also Central Park Raceway, Chandler. Been everywhere. It's a cool deal, man. And like I said, I just can't say it enough how cool it is to bring the old school guys back on here. And maybe he hadn't talked about racing for quite a while. You know what I mean? And that'll be something that be good for him to let some of those stories out. That way we capture them on tape.
Tape.
Yes.
How old are you? I think 1985 called.
Wind the reel back.
1985 called it once it's technology back.
Cassette tape.
It's going to be good stuff, and
you had to hit play and record at the same time.
And hope nothing else was going on in the background.
That's true.
Or the DJ talked over the beginning of your song.
That always sucked.
That was the worst. But no, hopefully.
Coming at you next, dude.
Hopefully, we'll be able to let some of these other old school guys, hear this episode and see that we aren't terrifying people, and we just want to share their stories, and they'll get on the mic and share theirs. Well,
what the cool thing about it is when you get a bunch of old school guys together, man, that's when the stories get to flowing, and maybe some of the older drivers that have since retired or just stepped away for a while, hear some of these stories and come back on and be like, I remember that, man. He was talking about this on that last episode, and that was pretty funny, and this is what I saw. That's the thing, man. Stories breed stories. I full well believe that. A lot of times we hear cautions breed cautions in the racing world. Thanks to Darrell Waltrip, he always says that. But I think stories breed stories, and I think that when we get a good story going, and I'm sure they've probably been added to over the years or
Well, that's
so.
how it
You never
happens.
know. But that's the beautiful part about it is, man, they're always good stories.
Well, we talk all the time about the rich racing heritage that this area has, and I use that term a lot. We're not just talking about the Waltrips or the Green brothers. We're talking about all these guys. It's not just a handful of racers that made the sport what it was. It was every single one of these competitors, the hot dogs of the day, the mid pack guys, the guys that were there every week, week after week, putting in the blood, sweat, and tears. And it's important that we do talk to these guys because their history and their stories are as important as anyone's.
Right, and that's true. And that's the thing is this sport, was built on the workhorses. And I kind of liken Mark to being one of those guys who was there a lot, was able to do quite well for himself, man. I mean, always a very, very formidable competitor on a track. Won a lot of races, won a couple championships actually. So and I was there around when he was doing that kind of stuff, and I was in the pits and sometimes on the track with him. And that's a cool thing for me to know, maybe what was going on under his helmet back in those times. So we're gonna ask him about that. So that's cool stuff. Man, they just had the big event here. A couple big events before last episode or before this episode. The American Modified Series and stormed into Cedar Ridge Speedway. Got washed out that first night, man, but they come back big time on the second night and got the show in, and it was a really, really big deal. And Will Krupp was able to take the big victory down there, and Trent Young ended up being your American Modified Series champion for 2018. And man, those guys have worked hard for it, and it wasn't an easy pack of drivers that was down there. I kept reading it online. I wasn't able to go myself, and we weren't able to get down there and cover that, but kept up with it on Facebook and through other people's exploits going on down there. All the classes were in action. So they had a big weekend, and I'm glad they got it in. They dodged the rain. It was all sun and fun down in Talladega for me this last weekend, but dodging the rain down there as they did, they got the show in, so that was a big deal. And congratulations to Cedar Ridge and Richard Nangie and all them guys down there. They do a great job and able to get that American Modified Series championship weekend to Cedar Ridge. I know there was a little bit of discord up in Illinois because most of it was run up there, but they were able to get that down here in Kentucky, right there in Morgantown. Great facility, and man, they put on a good show for the fans.
They did, and it was I think 22 mods showed up, and they did have full classes, full car count and all the other classes, right. And it was a little bit of a harder show for them to put on because they had to run Friday's show first on Saturday, clear the grandstands, clear the pits, and get everybody loaded back in for Saturday's show on Saturday. But it worked, and they got the show off without too many hitches. And I think this Saturday coming up is or tomorrow will be their last points race of the season, and then they've got an enduro scheduled for November 3rd, which will be their awards banquet and everything for their drivers and the points champions at their track for this year.
It's funny you should mention November the 3rd.
I think we've talked about November the 3rd before.
And it's not, and no offense to Cedar Ridge Speedway, but it's not the enduro at Cedar Ridge that we're talking about.
Nope.
There's a little piece of business earlier in the day that's going to go on down at the Owensboro Museum of Science and History down there at the Speedseum, downtown Owensboro, 2nd Street right there. It is the Kentucky Motorsports Hall of Fame induction ceremony. But after that, there's a lot of big things going on that day. Let's just start it out. Our buddy Blake Smith, joined the Bluegrass Motorsports Media crew, and we are happy to announce that he will be getting his own show on the Bluegrass Motorsports Media Network, radio network. It's not really radio, but it's Internet Radio Network.
His Internet Radio.
Right, and it's going to be Hot Laps, Blake Smith. It's going to kind of be in the vein of how he used to run the radio show. we're going to have guests on, and I talk about we're going to be the one doing it. But
you'll have guests on, and I will engineer the show.
Absolutely,
how's that? So
and I'll help out however I can.
There's a we in there somewhere.
It's a family show.
I said we. Anyway,
not two E's.
Nope, just one. But his first show will be at the Hall of Fame induction before the ceremony happens.
Right.
And hoping that he gets to interview the inductees, and fingers crossed that the Green brothers will be here, and we hear rumor that maybe Michael Waltrip will be here.
I hope so, man, and it's going to be awesome. And I think it's important. We need to cover that stuff and make sure that people know about it, and make sure that everybody's familiar with it. I don't think people get down to the Speedseum enough to be able to do the things they need to do down there, and I think it's one of those things where it's important, that they get down there and learn about some of Kentucky's racing history, whether it be drag racing, drag boats, stock cars, mud trucks, pulling trucks. I mean, anything. It's all relative, and it all pertains to Kentucky, and I think it's a big deal, and I think it would be an awesome experience, and I think it's going to be an awesome day, November the 3rd, and just especially for after the induction ceremony is over, there is a big announcement forthcoming. We cannot tell you here, because then why would we say it now and it's not a big announcement then? So make sure that you tune in to, come down there. Make sure you're there, or
we want you to be there.
Tune into a media outlet, that way you know what's going on.
It's going to be broadcast on every single channel that we have the ability to put it on, so that means Bent Fender Podcast page. I believe Blake will be broadcasting a live from, Hot Laps with Blake Smith, and Bluegrass Motorsports Media will be covering it as well. So, big stuff. So, keep that in mind. But stepping back a couple days, October 28th will be the Enduro and last points race at Windy Hollow. 150 lap Enduro. It's the Halloween 150 at the Hollow is the name of the event. So if you're able to get out and check that out. Nebo has an Enduro coming up as well.
I believe so. And also, if you like asphalt racing, the same day on the 28th, they're having the 125 lap street stock Enduro at Kentucky Motor Speedway. So right there in Whitesville. I know Windy has moved their start times up. I don't know if Kentucky Motor Speedway is going to be a little bit later that afternoon, but I know Windy moved their start times up.
They did.
You need to check their schedule, check their website, w8speedway.com, and also their Facebook page for those start times.
There's a pretty cool looking flyer out there on Facebook and their website that gives you all the information. Right. So look for that flyer. It's orange.
Well, not only that, then also coming up very, very soon, October the 21st, which will be in a couple of days after this episode comes out. It's the Halloween 200, the 30th annual Halloween 200 at the Salem Speedway there in Salem, Indiana. Street stock classic, man. It's unlimited starters, 3 wide start. It's going to be a big time. As we talked to Blake Hillard last episode, he can tell you it was all about that race. And if you haven't caught his episode, make sure you get yourself Salem ready and go back and listen to that episode. I think you'll have a real good time with it.
Well, and we're going to have a lot of guys from this area running that race.
Right.
You got Blake going to run, Brett Hudson, Heath Hilton more than likely will be up there.
I think I don't know if he's going to run it this year, but he said something about maybe next year going to run it.
He'll at least be up there.
Oh,
I'm
he'll
sure.
absolutely be there. Blaze Melton's going to be in there. Keith Martin, I know from here, is going to be in it. Mike Royal usually always runs it. I think he's going to run it. Friend of our show, buddy of ours, and that's going to be cool. He's going to get that. He's going to get that beautiful Chevelle out there and make some laps in it. Already been practicing that car. I saw out there on the high banks, so it's going to be cool to see that car in action. So a lot of guys go up there and support the Owensboro and local area gang going up there to do battle with the Salem greats, especially Chuck Barnes Jr., Chuck Barnes Sr., the Kimmel family and Todd Kempf and Skeeter Crum, and the list goes on and on about all these guys that are so tough at Salem. So the 30th annual Halloween 200. If you need an event shirt, get down to High Octane Racewear and Graphics and pick up your Halloween 200 event shirt. Heck, they might still have some of the Straight Out of the Holler shirts, the Windy Holler Raceway Park shirts available down there as well. So the swag game is strong with them, and we appreciate them being a sponsor of this great telecast.
We do.
So
We do a lot.
I don't think we're on the television.
Nope. Audio cast?
Yeah, that's cool.
Podcast. Somebody should come up with a term and call it that.
That's right.
But we also
a show that you record on the internet.
Right. We also have other sponsors that help us out, get us to where we're at, and that would be Lori Kimball with Home Realty Incorporated and Willie's Carb and Dino Shop.
That's right. Those are podcast-specific sponsors, and we can't thank them enough for being on this episode. Or not just this episode, but all episodes with us, and episodes going forward. But if you want to learn about our other sponsors as well, Mach 5 Race Cars Parts and Carts, Fairview IT Management, Martin's Towing and Recovery, Chad's Barbershop, Glenstone Construction, Slingshot Media, Red Star Graphics, we got them. We got them all.
We do.
That's good stuff. So, if you want to find us online, you can find us on the interwebs and at ConwayRacingTeam.com, also the BentFenderPodcast.com. You can find us at Conway Racing Team on Facebook, Bluegrass Motorsports Media, and the Bent Fender Podcast, all on Facebook. We have separate pages for every damn thing, especially Hot Laps with Blake Smith. You can find that on there too, so make sure you go over there and give that a like. That will help him out and grow the following for the show, and hopefully we have a successful broadcast here in about 3 weeks. It's going to be cool, really cool. Twitter at Conway Race Team, Instagram Conway Racing, and if you want to find us on anywhere a podcast can be consumed, you can find us at iTunes, Google Play, Podcast Addict, Podbean.com, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, YouTube, Overcast, Radio Public, iHeartRadio. We got it everywhere, man.
Yep.
I mean, if you want to listen to a damn podcast besides ours,
don't see why you would.
That's right. But download one of those, and you can find it. One thing coming out of last weekend also was the Vet City Motorcycle Music Fest. Huge success down there. Seemed like they had a huge crowd. Big turnout for that. A lot of great music down there. So Jimmy Rhodes and them pulled off a home run, it seems like, down there, and it's going to be. It was an awesome deal.
That's what we hear.
So, man, have we covered everything?
We have. I think we should let Mark in.
Absolutely.
In from the cold.
He probably wants to come in there and get in there and talk to us and have a good time with us. So he's knocking on the door.
Well, I'll go get him. We're going to throw it to some. I can't even talk. I'm so
commercials,
excited,
man.
We're going to throw it to some commercials and come back with Mark on the other side.
Are you looking for a hometown barbershop specializing in the best haircuts in Western Kentucky? Master Barber Chad Thompson has everything you need to keep you looking sharp for not only your special occasions, but for every day as well. Offering a line of haircut products to take care of your hair between cuts. Walk-ins are welcome, and you're always going to find friends and neighbors at Chad's. You can find Chad at 10655 Highway 764 in Whitesville, Kentucky, or you can give him a call at 270-903-8183.
And we're back here at Fairview IT Management, sitting here with Mark Stallings, man, the legend himself, the old number 97 around the racetracks around here, asphalt and dirt, man. And I'm glad you come on the podcast, man, because we need a little more than a shot of old school.
Well, appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you, man. And like I said, I've seen you raced against you myself for years and years. But, take it back. Take it all the way back to where it started, man. How did you get into racing?
Well, it was probably early 90s. My brother was already racing, and he had the wrong attitude towards it when he started. He was somebody hit you or banged into you, he got mad, and he just lost all control. He couldn't drive.
Not Curtis.
So he said he wanted to try. I was wanting to try it. He said, well, I'll put you in the car to see what you can do with it. And one thing led to another, and I was driving for him.
Uh-oh.
I did that for probably all the way up to 98. And then 99, 2000, I built my own car and got my own number. Won my first championship in 98.
Wow.
And then won my second one in 2002.
There you go.
After 2002, I said I'd never run for them again.
That's
very stressful.
Yeah.
A lot of work. I'd get up on Sunday morning and be sick at my stomach and just lay out. And if there was any chance of rain, I'd pray for rain. But all in fun, we had a good time with it.
Yeah, I mean, you guys had a lot of success. Stallings Brothers Racing, the 67 and the 97, pretty much everybody knew that iconic, had the bow tie on the shirts. And you guys did have a lot of success, and you yourself, you know, I mean, like I said, I've been in races against you. I've seen you race. You know, how did you start out going to the racetracks? What got you interested in the sport before we get into the driving years?
Actually, when I got out of high school, I was more into hanging out with my buddies, and buddy had an apartment together, and we had big time on the weekends and worked during the week. And Curtis got into racing, and I kind of got the itch. I wanted to drive, and then once you get in the car and put them seatbelts on, you make a couple laps. Hey, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I want to keep doing this.
No matter what happens, it
Yeah.
usually is pretty fun.
We got a good learning curve with it, starting out. Of course, when I started, there was no lower class.
Right.
It was you jump in and run or get run over. I think they called it Detroit Iron then.
Right.
Guys like, let me think. My mind went blank. Kenny Rudd, Gary Birch. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Yep.
What's the not Estes. Best Brothers.
Oh yeah, Harry and Barry. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
They was driving. There was a guy named Joe Hafford. I mean, it was just a big field of cars, 20 cars in a feature.
Right.
But for the most part, these guys were clean. I mean, you run just like you run nose to tail, and never if you touch somebody, you know, you back off, get back in it, and run. Most of the time, run caution free.
Yeah.
But that's where I got my learning from. You know, you jump in behind a guy that's been doing it for a while and kind of follow him a little bit and see where the line was and go from there.
Well, you know, those guys are up front for a reason, and you know, they've been doing it probably quite a while, and we know Kenny can drive, and Harry and Barry best. I mean, you know, you talk about guys that can figure a race car out. It doesn't matter. It might be missing a wheel. They're going to figure out how to get it around the track.
Oh, you know it.
But, you know, the old Detroit Iron class, and you're talking about Windy Hall Speedway, right?
Right.
And, you know, of course, live out in Friendly Village there, and so it's close to home for you guys. And so that's kind of where it all happened?
That's where it all started. And when we started, we wasn't all about points and running every week. We liked to jump from different tracks. Back then, McHenry was open. We'd go run there on a Saturday night or go to Nebo. Just travel around a little bit and try to get the feel of it and have a big time with it.
Well, and that's a good thing, too, because, you know, a lot of times, and there's nothing wrong with running a home track, you know, if that's where you want to race, that's fine. But, you know, I think you do pick up different skills driving at a place like Nebo, so a tight turn, paperclip, you know, Windy Hollow, big, fast, D-shaped oval. You know, Cedar Ridge, High Banks, McHenry, real fast track. So, you know, there's advantages to going to all those different places.
Yeah, I was able to run the half mile and the 3/8 at McHenry. And the first time we went to McHenry on the half mile, we didn't have enough gear. So I had to start in the back. Of course, we was running like a 273 gear. I had to run it second.
Oh, man.
We go off in turn one, and 3 cars go straight off of the bank. Well, I drawed up and said, oh, man, am I going to go through this corner or am I going with them? But we finally got the hang of it.
Well,
that was a fast track.
It was. And the cool thing about it is you gained 3 spots in one turn.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so you got to look at it. You know, if they're gone, I say, hey, I'm 3 paces ahead of what it was.
I got to witness the World Outlaws sprint cars down there one night. You talk about, that's all you seen was just dust flying.
Oh, I imagine.
And they're packing the left front wheel all the way around. That was pretty awesome.
McHenry, you know, for people that don't remember it, and I have just very few memories of it. We didn't go over there too much back when I was a kid. It'd be more Windy Hollow or places like that. But McHenry, man, you know, just so much storied history. You know, Sam Hines and they're creating that. You know, they had so much out there. I mean, had the outlaw late models. They had, you know, outlaw sprint cars. And things like that. I mean, they could bring those big shows in because it was super fast.
Yeah, and the pits were pretty big too. But if it ever come a rain and they was calling for rain, you never seen guys get out of there so fast because you couldn't get out if it got to rain very hard.
Yeah, I mean, when you went into the track, it had to go down that big dip.
Yeah.
Get in there, you know, be between them houses and stuff. But, you know, so you ran on back then. You know, what kind of cars were you guys in back then? I know, you know, a lot of the Impala stuff was like we always run, but
we had a 77 Monte Carlo.
Oh, wow.
And Clint and Jug Colley helped us out a little bit when we first started, helped us set it up. And give us motor tips. And I tell everybody, Jug Colley gave me advice when I started racing, and I'll never forget it. To this day, he told me, you got to go slow before you can go fast.
That's
and that always stuck in my head.
That is true, and that's the thing is, you can't. People just think you can get in there and absolutely just hog on it first time, flat on the floor. You're not going to go anywhere. There's a reason why them 3 guys went flying off the side of the track at night. It's because they didn't.
And I think a lot of my success come from patience.
Yep.
Because sometimes I wouldn't be aggressive enough, but like you said, somebody would mess up in front of me. Well, there's a position.
That's right.
And you get up, be running consistent. Somebody else slip up. There's another position, and before you know it, I'm up in the top 3. My brother would always get tickled at me if I ever had a problem in the feature. Somebody got into me, cut a tire down or something, come in and change a tire. He'd tell somebody stand next to him, say, "Now watch." He said he's going to the front. He said he's not going to be overly aggressive about it. He's going to be patient. You watch, he'll be up in the front.
And that's what you do.
That's the way I always was. I mean,
Yep.
I wasn't going to overdrive somebody. I drove somebody the way, I felt if I drive you this way, you should drive me that way.
Right.
And a lot of times it worked out. Sometimes it didn't.
Yeah, sometimes the courtesy kind of goes out the window sometimes.
Yeah.
And, just depend on who you're racing against. But Curtis is actually absolutely right, man. Watching you drive, you would. I mean, if there'd be a mishap, sometime you cut a tire down, things like that. But you always seem to end up in the front of the pack.
And I always, when I come out of a corner, I'm looking straight away ahead. I'm looking in the next corner going in. See if somebody messes up or gets crossed up, I'm already slowing up or looking to see where I need to go to avoid a crash.
Right. I mean,
you got some guys that just look right over the hood of the car and that's it,
Yeah.
And then you come up on it, it's too late.
Heck, sometimes they don't look over the steering wheel, but much less the hood of the car.
I've raced at Windy Hollow years ago, maybe when Jack Vick had it, it'd be so dusty, you come out of 4 and it's like Days of Thunder. Where it's all dust and you can't see until you get out of the dust, and you're on the gas, off the gas, hoping that there's no crash coming in front of you.
I'm telling you, it has been that way. We raced at Nebo recently, and it was that way. We might as well just duct taped over our face shields and just went at it.
That's a scary feeling.
It is, especially when especially when you work so hard on your car and things like that. And then, tracks get dusty. It just happens.
Oh yeah, ain't nothing you can do about that.
You can't do that. But man, so you guys started out in Big Monte Carlo back then, and like I said, Detroit Iron class. That was something, man. That made a big class, and you went from Detroit Iron to them days, maybe to
I think
a Pure Street or a late model.
They called it Pure Stock. That was what the next class they called it, and we run that. And '98, I won at Windy Hollow. Curtis won at Chandler. We both won the points. I'd run it on. He'd run Friday night, I'd run Sunday, same car. Never did anything motor-wise all year, just changed spark plugs, changed oil, regular maintenance all year long. And both of us won the points in a 77 Monte Carlo.
Well, that's the thing is some of that stuff back then, though, it was made to do that.
Right.
It was made to last, and
Yeah.
good. Those cars were great cars.
We had a lot of fun, a lot of luck with that car. I raced against guys like Chad Boone. That's when he first started.
Big Monte Carlo himself.
And we was the top 3 cars were pretty consistent, pretty close in points. I think it come down to the last race, and I won by like 10 or 15 points.
And I tell you, seeing some of those battles, and that's why I used to love it. Never really run for a championship myself. Never been able to get the time off to do it, but coming down to that last night. And you got to finish X amount or better, or try to, and of course everybody's going to try to win the race, but that was always thrilling, man. And you didn't know who was going to win until that checkered flag flew.
Yeah, I think in 2002 it come down to me and Terry Sparks.
Wow.
And it come down the same way. I think I won by 10 or 15 points. And me and him could run every week. If he was leading, I couldn't get around him, and if I was leading, he couldn't get around me.
And Terry's a great driver himself. Won 11 championships.
Yeah.
You think about that. Terry was always in that old LTD, man. That thing had more dents than straight panels, man.
Yep.
But that thing
Until
was
they
fast.
crashed it out in the Enduro, I think.
They probably just dug a hole and buried it. They just said some words over it, and that was it.
Oh yeah.
So
he had a lot of luck with that car.
Heck yeah, he did. I remember being in races when you guys, I rode with Jason Capps one night, and we raced over at Windy Hollow. It was my first time ever in a race car. Rode with him, and you were in there. Had the old I don't know if it was the old John Deere colored car. May have been. I think it was. It may have been.
Might have been.
He had the cow, had the big Oldsmobile, and man, I don't know what happened. You ended up breaking a wheel off, I think, in the heat race. And
Yeah, that was 2003, I believe.
Yeah, you come out of that car, boy, you was mad.
That heat race, a guy got into me and cut my tire down. And that was one of them nights I come in, they changed the tire, and they was relining the field back up. I didn't even make a lap, and I started on the tail, and I started from the back and come to the front and won.
So that's just patience. And you're exactly right. That's what it takes. So you guys, you ran around and you won your championships, I guess, pure stock. So what? I know at one point you got on those asphalt high banks over at Kentucky Motor Speedway.
I think it was either 99 or 2000. I hooked up with Chris Blythe with Texas Roadhouse, and we built an old, back then, it's what you call scrappers now, I guess, where they run through the center.
Right.
Me and Chris put a big old Oldsmobile together, and we had an Olds motor in it. Well, it didn't last very long. He'd run it a little bit, and I'd run it a little bit. Well, I finally started running it Thunderstock. I built a motor for it. It ran a little while, and we blew it up. Well, the following year, we built a Thunderstock car, and he was a big Chad Little fan. And that's how the whole 97 number come together.
Right.
So I told him, I said, well, we'll paint it up like Chad Little's car, and we'll put 97 on it. And I had Daryl Macy letter it all up, and we put Texas Roadhouse on it. I run probably a 3/4 season. All my help was on dirt.
Right.
And kept tearing the car up, ripped rear end out of it. Well, my buddy Billy Egler was helping me, but still all my crew was on dirt. I finally had enough of it. I was fast qualifier a few times, won a couple of features. Had a pretty good time with it. Me and Macy run up front, and Sam Estes, he come in, he was winning the bunch. And I finally went back to dirt. That's where my roots were, and I just got more enjoyment on dirt.
It is. It's different. It just is. I mean, if people don't understand, if they've run dirt all their life, you ought to go try asphalt one time, or a couple times. And I ran it myself this year and had a great time on asphalt.
Yeah, I did too. Like I said, and that's where the patience comes in too on asphalt. You got to be smooth. You got to know when to get in the gas, not to go in real hard in the corner and be smooth off the corner. But I just like the being in the gas on dirt.
Oh yeah.
Letting her sling, let it eat.
Well, and that's the thing. Back in those days, I guess Thunderstock's 305 class.
Yep.
Not a whole lot of cage in the car.
2-barrel.
Big heavy cars. You can see a picture of that car, Texas Roadhouse, right here in Owensboro. You can go look at it. Got you with your checker flag out there doing your victory lap. But DOT tires. I mean,
you could run old bi-splies on the front, and you had to run radials on the back.
Ain't that something? I mean, treaded tires had to get out there, and it's pretty much all racing tires out there now. But had to get through. You eat them up if you're not careful, and that's where you had to say, you got to be patient, be smooth.
Yeah, I bought back then you go to Pep Boys and buy these. They were like 30,000 mile tires. They were real soft, and you get 4 of them for like $100.
There you go.
And that's where I was going to get my tires at.
just stick them on there and go.
Yeah.
And did it eat them up real bad?
No,
back then, or
not
just you had
really.
the car set up pretty good?
As long as you, like I said, as long as you was on the gas and off the gas at the right time and wasn't spinning tires, they'd last quite a bit unless somebody got into you and cut them down.
Oh yeah, that's always an inherent risk there. Well, tell us about you've been out there, and you mentioned Sam Estes. We had Chase on here, and he talked about his dad running out there. Hard-nosed competitor there. And Jeff Macy, a lot of people, Macy's been on the show. And Jeff, started out on asphalt. But that was pretty much what he did.
Yeah, he run that whole year. I think, may run second in points that year. I don't even remember. Like I said, I left halfway through the year.
He said, I'm going back to dirt.
Yeah, I'm going back to dirt.
But you had a little bit of help, You had Billy Egler. Billy knows his stuff about asphalt a little bit, and then that's not a bad guy to have in your corner.
Yeah, he did all the tire setup, checked the tire pressure, and he helped me go over it all. Billy was real good help. Billy's been a long-time friend. He's always lettered my cars, done a super job. We've won several car shows. He's always been right there for me.
Oh, Billy, he's he's pretty neat, man. He's handy with those brushes.
Yeah, he's lettered a lot of cars. I think he's even started doing it again here and there a little.
Yeah, he came back out this year, I think, with Chase Estes' car, man, and that car looks tough. Whole hand lettered cars. I mean, we didn't have wraps, back then.
No.
We didn't have, vinyl was fairly new, and that was the way it was. You had to paint those numbers on.
Yeah, you spend several hours in the garage at nighttime waiting on Billy, watching Billy do his job or do his magic, you might say.
Well, you did have some pretty cool cars, man. But coming back to dirt, I guess it just felt like a homecoming. Getting off the asphalt and you just say, well, this is what I know.
It's just what I was good at. I had a lot of success with it and just wanted to stay with it.
Well, now you guys, I guess you hooked up with David Hare, and you guys built several cars there. I remember the blue car you had with the kind of the dark blue with the rainbow colors and stuff on it.
Yeah, we always liked the different colors on there.
I think I ended up with the roof on that car.
Oh, really?
I did. I went out there and got it, and we put it. I think we put it on one of my cars.
Me and Davey had a lot of fun, and that was one thing we said when we put a car together. If we can't have fun with doing it, we need to walk away from it. And that's the aspect a lot of drivers lose with racing.
Right.
Is the fun part of it.
It is, and I think that you talked about it, and I want you to kind of elaborate on that a little bit. Is running for a championship, and a lot of people, they're like, oh yeah, they want to win a championship, and I would love to win a championship myself, but you got to make every race, you got to finish, you got to run well, and a lot of people don't understand how nerve-wracking that is. I mean, if you get a motor problem, if you get the rear end tore out, it's a big deal.
Back when I won the championship in 2002, I had a motor sitting on the stand. It had a distributor in it. It had everything. All I had to do was bolt the carburetor on. Of course, pull the motor out, put this one in, bolt the carburetor on, it was ready to go. And of course, Troy Welborn was my engine man. He was on top of it.
Right.
And I also had parts laying around. Anytime I scrapped a car, I took all the suspension off of it, and it was laying behind a building.
Right.
And of course, I didn't live but 2 miles from the track, so if I broke a tie rod or axle, I'd run home and get it, intermission, change it, and get it back on. But yeah, there's a lot to it. You got to keep on it, stay on it.
Right.
And the second week out, they claimed my motor.
well, I'll be daggone. Just if anything else could happen.
They claimed my motor and took the heads off my brother's car the same night. Wow. Gene Mitchell was a tech man then. He walks up and hands me $400 and said, this man over here just claimed your engine. I said, well, give it back to him. I want his. He said, no, it don't work that way. He said, you have to pull it out of your pocket. Well, there was another guy there that didn't like this other guy. He walked up and he said, what's going on? And I told him. He whips out the $400 out of his pocket and he said, here, claim his. So I walked to Gene. I said, I want his motor. And Gene walked over to, you know who I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
He walked over to him, handing the money, and he looked at his engine builder. His engine builder shook his head no, and he dropped his head because he said he was going to buy his championship. So Gene walks back to me. He said he denied the claim. I said, well, then my claim should be void then.
Right.
He's DQ'd. He shouldn't be able to claim. No, he still gets your motor. And I kid you not, it was a stock bore 307 with factory flat top pistons with 305 heads on it. And it was the best motor I ever had. It's a motor I ran Thunderstock with, and we run Enduros with it, and I hated to let it go.
Yeah. That's a heartbreaker, and sometimes those claim rules, man, it gets crazy, and you don't quite understand.
There never was another one all year long.
Yeah.
I guess everybody knew, if you claim Mark, he's going to take it.
He's going to take that money.
But I think that year they was only going to allow 2 anyway.
Yeah. Was that the night? I wonder if we were there that night. They were the old scales was back here in the pits, and y'all lined all 3 of them up, and oh boy, it got crazy down there that night.
Gene couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe I was selling it. So he comes over and he telling me, keep your pulleys, keep your carburetor, keep your flywheel, keep your manifolds. So all he got was a long block.
Right.
And he thought he was getting like a 406 or 380. That's back then. That's when what we was talking about earlier, with one wheel spinning and 75 series tires with a highway gear. You put that car on the top and you drive it.
Right.
It didn't take a whole lot if you had a whole lot of horsepower, you're just blowing the tires off.
That's right.
And
Those DOTs wouldn't hook up like the racing tires would.
And that year, I all these guys in the back was complaining I was cheating, and I had this big sponsor on my car, and I'd walk over to them and say, hey man, what kind of tire pressure are you running? Oh, I don't know. I just fill them up with air before I come out here. Well, what's your timing set at? What kind of gears you running? It's not motor that's beating you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's little stuff that you're not doing that you could be doing to be competitive with me. I'll help you out. But I'm cheating. I got big money behind me.
How many times have you always heard that, it's get out, run, you're cheating, and I think everybody, we've said this on the podcast a couple of times, is I think people need to put that crap to bed. I mean, here's everybody just wants to accuse everybody cheating and things like that. Well, we do have a tech line. For better or worse, sometimes we got a tech line. But, a lot of times claim rules are there. If you want to see what I got, put the money up, we'll see what we got. It's not a problem. But when it's over, and just like you said, when it's over and I win the claim, that's it. Now, I don't want to hear nothing else. You've seen it. I'm going to put it back together, and we're going to go back to racing. But you're right. You're one of those guys who would come over and you would talk about tire pressures, talk about gear, talk about your time. I mean, maybe the guy ain't running enough time. Maybe he's running too much. But you're one of those people who, if you can get him running better, he's going to back off of you, number one. Say, oh, you may be cheating is mad. But, that's the thing is you've got another car to put on a show with. You guys can get a little, be 5 cars. You remember how it used to be, 5, 6 cars, man, you throw a blanket over them.
Man, I can remember cruisers back in the day, 20, 25 cars in the feature.
Oh, yeah.
And you start on the front row and you kind of look back, like if you're going in turn 3 and you look back towards turn 2 and you're like, holy cow,
yeah,
all
they're
these
still
cars
stretched
back
up.
there.
Oh, yeah.
And, and a lot of times those guys, 5 and 6 cars up front could run, just battle. Mm-hmm. Somebody be in your quarter panel or come up in your door, or not hit your door, but be door to door and never touch him.
Right.
Just be. And it was fun. I mean, it was a blast knowing that you could run next to a guy and not get run over.
Yeah, that's important because people, a lot of times the people get excited, and they do, and newer people sometimes do that. Hell, people get older, have been racing for years, sometimes they get excited. You just never know. What depends on a night. But you're right. You could run door to door. I mean, if somebody come tap you bumper going in the corner, you knew. I mean, we talked about Shane Sullivan, and I told him this. Heck, I knew when he was behind me because I felt the smack on the bumper. And I was like,
or Dwayne Richardson.
That's right. That's the two. That's exactly right. That's how I'd know they were there. And but that's the thing. When those guys are there, they're knocking on the door. So
but they knew when to push and when not to push.
That's right. Because they weren't. I mean, they weren't going to tear their car up.
Right.
But B, there's no sense in them tearing your car up. So now you shouldn't get mad. And come back and try to smack somebody else's bumper off because, what's the point in that?
Yeah. Well, when you're running that close together, too, and you get a little bit more momentum coming off the corner than they did, they're right there. It's hard to check up that fast knowing they got somebody right behind them.
That's exactly right. Well, Mark, what we're going to do real quick, we're going to go ahead and take a break. We'll pay a few bills here. We got to get some money behind us, so we're going to pay a couple bills, and we'll come back on the other side and continue the conversation.
Sounds good.
Having trouble getting your business vehicle noticed? Want your race machine to look sharp on and off the track? Give Josh Tyler a call at High Octane Wraps and Apparel. They specialize in high-quality vinyl graphics as well as full vehicle vinyl wraps. They can handle jobs of all sizes, whether it's your racing go-kart all the way up to your semi-truck. With a quick turnaround and design and install, you can truly call today and look good tomorrow. Give them a call at 270-929-2605 or stop by their shop located at 2531 West 2nd Street in Owensboro.
And we're back from the break, sitting here with Mark Stallings. Mark, we were talking about some of the old school Wendy holidays, and it did get crazy out there every once in a while. But was Wendy Hollow always your favorite track to drive, or did you like one over the other, or did you like them all?
Wendy Hollow was always my favorite. I've raced it so many years. I knew where to put the car, where to set it. how hard to go in the corner, when to let off, when to get back in. We'd go to Nebo quite a bit. Back when they had the breakout rule, we tried that.
Oh, yeah.
Me and Tommy Brooks would pull down there, and we'd try to put on a little show. He'd lead a little while, I'd lead a little while, and try to, and then keeping in your mind that, you know, you can only go so fast.
Right.
Because you're on that clock.
Yep.
And it would come down, one of us would win. Well, one of us would get DQ'd because we broke out. And we both just laugh about it. Well, Tommy finally had enough of it, and he told him that, I don't know if he decided or the track wanted him to move up to pure stock. So he moved up pure stock, and he was like a 5th or 6th place car. And I think, was it Tim Coble, he owned it then.
Right.
He went to Tim and said, look, that's all I got. He said, this is no fun. I'm not going to pull over here and run 5th or 6th. This is no fun to me. That I don't have enough motor to run with these guys. You need to do away with that breakout rule and be done with it. And because of Tommy, they did away with it. And we go back down there, and then we just have a blast.
Yeah, you didn't have to worry about anything
Right.
in, yeah. That man, you know, you did mention him, and lost him quite a while ago now, but Tommy Brooks, man, talk about Tommy a little bit, and you know.
You know, at one point, I lived on 81 behind Even Steven.
Right.
And I had a garage. And we built my car, Tommy Brooks's car, Awesome Possum, Paul Lehman, built his car in there.
Golly.
And built my brother's pure stock all in one winter. Well, we got all our cars done, and my brother's was the last one, and all it was a frame and a cage, and had some of the suspension on it. And we built that car in 2 weeks. Put a body on it.
Wow.
Of course, he had Rabbit racing engines.
Right.
Rabbit was there, put his motor in it. They was still putting the lettering on it. We put them all in the mall. They was still putting the lettering on it as we was pulling out of the driveway.
Well, I remember, you know, a lot of people don't think about, you know, those old car shows like that. But they did used to be right there in Town Square Mall,
Yep.
right here in Owensboro, and they'd drive the cars in the mall, and they'd be sitting throughout. And, man, I remember that when all those cars were over there. Tommy had his car. Was that the same car that Preacher Mike ended up turning over that night, ended up on top of another car? And was that the same car? Or he might end up on top of Tommy Brooks.
Yeah, that might have been. I think Tommy worked out of my garage for 2 years, and then he went to Robert Sasha's garage.
Right.
So that might have been a different car.
Boy, I tell you what, that night was crazy.
But Tommy was the funniest guy you ever meet. He'd do anything for anybody. If he had a bad night at the racetrack, he would sit there Sunday night and say, I'm done. I'm not going back to that track again. Like if it was Nebo and he had a bad time, I ain't going back no more. I'm just going to stick to Windy. I said, Tommy, you'll be there next week.
Yeah.
And sure enough, Monday or Tuesdays, he's talking about going to Nebo. I said, I thought you was done, Tommy. But Tommy was all about kids. He always had a handful of candy. Like Curtis Lee, he was little then.
Right.
My boy was little. He'd walk up, he'd have mouth freshers or whatever, like
Tic
Tacs or something like that. He'd say, hold your hand out, and he would give him candy. And Tommy was a great guy, and I sure do miss him because we had some pretty good times in the garage.
Heck, he was a heck of a driver too, man. You know, and did everything from running, you know, to cruiser type stuff to pure stock to even in a modified at some point. And you know, and you'd always know right there at the corner, right there at the concrete pads. He was always parked right there and right behind the scales. And I remember Tommy being there all the time, man. And he was a heck of a guy.
We had more fun in the garage than we did at the racetrack a lot of times, just sitting in the garage, because you never know what somebody was going to say, and Tommy he'd make you laugh, and that's what a guy needs, just to help relieve stress and have some time in the garage with your buddies and kick back and have a big time.
Well, especially building 4 race cars, especially one in 2 weeks.
Yeah, we kept Troy Welburn busy. He did all the painting on them, and he paint the inside and paint the outside, and he was all about dedication. I mean, even down to the engines on them. He paint the head bolts, paint the block, paint the valve covers. I mean, you took the hood off, it's like, man, that's a race car motor.
Where'd that come from? Did you pull that out of a car off the lot, man?
Yeah, he'd be putting clear coat on the engine. Like, what are you doing, Troy?
It keeps the mud off. Keeps the grease off.
Helps it wash off.
That's
easier.
right. You can spray that right on off there. Man, so you take. Let's see. We talked about the car, the old blue car with you and David. Was that your last year in Cruiser for a little while? Did you take a break after that? I remember we ran the Enduro that year, and well, I didn't. You did, and we ended up in your pit. We was down in the infield, man, having a big time. Jason White was down there, and a ton of people. This is back when the Enduros, man, we'd have 100 cars. It wasn't nothing, and we ended up. You got hot after the first 50.
Well, I think I led a bunch of the first 50.
Right.
Me and Jason would Jason White was back and forth with it.
Right.
Well, they had a Chris Bunch, I think, or Mozzie, and Chris Bunch was up in turn 1, wrecked right at the top of the track. Of course, me, I always say I'm looking a straightaway ahead. For some strange reason, this one lap I wasn't looking. Well, I go off in turn 1 up a little high. When I realized that Mozzie was sitting there, it was too late.
Right.
Well, I hit him and it busted the radiator, and they threw the red flag, and that was the first 50 they called it. When I come in, there was, I guess, you and Jason Wilkie, and there was a whole crew of people yanking the radiator out and putting another radiator in it.
That's right.
Needless to say, we didn't make it very many laps after that.
No.
The motor let go.
Well, people, was that in the Halloween, or were we at that snowball that year?
I think that might have been a Halloween.
It may have been. It was cold. It was real cold, and a lot of people don't remember. And we'll set the scene for you if you've been to Windy Hollow ever. Octobers used to get a little bit colder here than they do right now, but we're in the 50 degrees. But we're talking about, this is a cold October in the 30s and 20s,
right.
And we're out there racing. I don't know where. I guess we're all crazy, but. To get water, there wasn't a water hose, and everybody had to pit in the infield for the Enduro, and people didn't get. There wasn't a water hose, and I remember that people out there throwing rocks into the lake, busting the ice, and we had buckets on a string and trying to pull. And
old muddy water out, put it in your radiator.
Put it in the radiator, and red hot engines don't like ice cold water.
No, it's not real good on them.
You came out, Matt. You was hammered down too, man, and here you come pulling in and.
I have never had any luck in Enduro. 2002, when I won the championship, I run the Enduro. I was leading it too, and before the first 50 was up, I'd go in the corner and it'd feel like a trailing arm was broke. You could feel the rear end moving. I was just driving the car with the rear end. Well, come in after the 50 laps. I said, we got a trailing arm broke. We need to try to see if we can find one and fix it. Well, it wasn't a trailing arm. It was where the loop is in the rear end. As the loop comes down to go straight,
right.
The frame broke in half. I mean, it looked like somebody took a Sawzall and cut it right in half. Well, we should have been done then. We should have quit. Well, Troy Wellborn was on the fire department, and Sean Libbs and a bunch of them. Well, they're over there getting log chains out of a fire truck, and a big come-along.
Here we go.
We come along the rear end back together. Needless to say, we didn't make it 2 or 3 laps.
No, I don't think so.
You got to give a guy A for effort.
Hey,
anyway.
I'll tell you what, man. Stuff like people don't realize. And of course, guys, we were crazy. You got to think about do anything to get just back in the race. And if it was log chaining the frame back together, by golly, that's what we were going to do.
You're thinking in the back of your mind, this ain't going to work.
No. You're like, just get in and drive.
This is going to end up bad.
But I think got hurt,
Yeah, I think it cut the left rear tire down and the engine let go at the same time.
Yeah. So
Luckily, I was over turn 1 off the track.
I think that car was like, "That's it, I'm out of here. Y'all get out of here now."
I was running fifth in one time, and the engine let go right past the flag stand, right as you go on turn 1, and I sit next to that wall for 25, 30 laps, just holding the belts. Every time somebody went by, please don't hit me.
Yeah, you heard them coming too, and that's that was the thing. Old Windy Hollow, man. Back then we would run up high. You'd come straight down that straightaway, right on the wall, and man, you'd kick it right there where the wall ended, and that was a bad place to be.
Randy Westfield he drove Curtis's car one year, and the thing had lost the axle or something right in the middle of turn 3 and 4, and that car got totaled. And it was a '77 Monte Carlo. Curtis had this car for a long time, but. That's a chance you took when you put a car in there. You're either going to come back in one piece and maybe a decent finish, or you're coming back with nothing.
That's right, and you just never know what would happen in one of those Enduros. Because guys, I mean, like again, we for people that don't remember how they were, we've had them before. 3 wide. The leaders are in turn 1, and they're stacked all the way back around to turn 2. The whole track, 3/8 mile track, and the whole damn track is covered.
I started on the pole in one year, and back when Jack Vick had it, well, he wet the track down.
I remember that.
I caught the tail end of the field in turn 4, and they just covered the front of the car, and I never could get it to cool off. We come in, pour water on it, get it cooled down, go back out, make 2 or 3, 10 laps, come in, cool it back down. Once you get a car hot like that, you can't get it to cool off. We finally just give up and pulled in the infield. I thought, man, this is pretty cool. I'm on the front row. I got a shot, you know.
You got a shot, all right.
Yeah,
You
got a shot with mud.
Yeah, that's all you got. But, you know, that was we talk about that, though, and we laugh and we things like that. But, man, wasn't it cool, man. Everybody knew. You know, everybody'd wait for the Halloween Enduro. And then we also had the snowball, you know, and they would always run that the first weekend in January. And cold, golly, it was cold.
You pull in the pits, and there was no – I've got old pictures at home of the pits, and there's no room nowhere.
Right.
I mean, they're in the middle of the pits, cars pitted.
People drag cars out of the weeds just to come run these things. And, you know, it didn't have to look pretty, obviously, because you never know what might happen.
Right.
But, you know, that was just I remember how it was, man. And you know, we talk about those good old days, and just not just the Enduros, but always had a big field of cars.
You know, and we even had a big time in the pits, you know. Everybody was buddies, and you could cut up. If you needed something, you walk over to another guy, and if he had it, he'd let you use it, you know.
Right. Well, you did mention a guy a few minutes ago before we get moving on to another thing I want to talk about with your racing career. But you mentioned a guy named Bobby Daniels, man, old Rabbit Racing Engines, and you know, he was pretty special to that race team there for quite a little bit.
Yeah, he was tough, and Rabbit was pretty particular about his engines. If his engine was in your car and it was sitting in your garage, a lot of times you didn't start it until Rabbit was there.
Right.
And if he was there, you didn't sit and crack on it and rev on it. And I'll tell you a story. We went to Nebo one night. Curtis called me. He said, look, I can't go to Nebo tonight. He said, Rabbit wants to go. Load my car up and take it. And he was talking about quick steer earlier. It had quick steer. I never drove quick steer in my life. I said, man, I don't know. You know, I ain't never drove your car. I ain't never drove quick steer. You'll be all right. Take it down there. He said, you drive your race. Just be smooth. You'll be fine. So the whole time I'm still nervous, not sure about it. We load it up and we go down there. Start on the pole in the heat race. Go off in the heat race. I led the whole heat race. I'm learning the car. Quick steer, you barely move the steering wheel, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And old Bob Wilson was right on my tail. I look over, he's on the inside of me on the last lap, and I end up winning. Well, I come in the pits and thought, man, that's pretty cool, you know. First time in pure stock with this much horsepower and win. Old Rabbit looks at me and said, I spent $400 on that carburetor, and you go out there and drive it like that. I said, what?
What are you talking about? I won the race.
Yeah, I said, we won, Rabbit. He said, you don't do a carburetor like that, this, that. And I said, we can load it up. He looked, his eyes got real big. I said, this ain't my car.
Yeah.
It's the first time I ever drove. We can load it up, go home. Well, Curtis called me, and I was telling him about it. He said, oh, don't worry about it. He'll be all right. Went out in the feature and won the feature, too.
he's
he
over there like,
was
oh,
very
man.
particular about, you know, but he was tough.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he
But
was,
see,
man.
that's where, you know, brothers, Curtis was a totally different driving style than mine.
Right.
Curtis was in the gas, off the gas. Me, I'm throttle control through the corner.
Right. Instead of flat, you know,
Right.
flat down and then,
Yeah,
you know,
and
come
then
through
right
the corner.
back, flat down the straightaway, let out, burp it, and right back in. I'm in and out of the gas.
$400 on that carburetor. You gonna treat it like that?
Yeah.
You're like, well, like we won the race, man. What are you
Right.
talking about? Treat it like that? You know, so I drove the car. What do you want me to do?
He special ordered this carburetor from California or somewhere.
It's a super top secret carburetor he had there.
I guess.
Bobby, you know, man, my dad knew Bobby for years too, and man, he was funny though. Some of the stuff he'd go on with in the pits, you'd be like, "Are you serious?" You know. But it was, you know, he seemed like a real good guy though.
He was a character. You just had to know how to take him.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's like.
But he's helped a lot of people. He was helped Butch Hill for years.
Right.
And then he helped Curtis. He helped Clint Colley. I'm sure he's helped a bunch of drag racers working out there, Automotive Machine Performance for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, Bobby, lost him, kind of suddenly there. It's been quite a long time ago now, and he was missed too, and that's the thing. We talk about some of the guys that we have lost, that we used to have a great time with, and it's sad to see them go, but we got those memories, different things that we can rely on over the years,
Right.
Now you took a little bit of a break, I guess, for a little while, and you end up getting hooked up with the Dowls down there, and you come back in a cruiser car.
Yeah, I think it was 2007, I guess. Black Beauty, we called her.
Oh yeah,
That car was a rocket.
it was.
And the story on that was it was supposed to have been Boogie's car.
Right.
They built it brand new. Well, Boogie he had this superstition, he had this other car and he won all these races with it, and he didn't want to jump out of that car and jump in this new car. Well, I drove his car he was running the first night out, and it broke a ball joint and had some problems with it. Boogie decided he didn't want the new car. So we put me in the new car, man. That car was fast.
Yes,
and everybody said it had a different sound than any other car out there.
Thing about it is that car is still around.
Yeah, Ricky Rudd still got
right.
it.
Yeah, got a little. Well, Miguel drove it for a little while. He
bought it from Roger. Roger, he came up to me and said, Hunley's made an offer on this car. He said, I don't want to lose friendship or nothing over this car. I said, sell it. I said, if he offered you a price you can't refuse, let it go.
Yeah. Well, they got it, man, and they ended up with it. And now Ricky's got it, and it's since won several times since then.
And that's a tough old car, I tell you. It's been through a lot of races.
It has been.
I went to, me and Boogie went to Cedar one night, and I followed him. I never had been able to really get around Cedar very well, and he could. I mean, he knew where to put the car, where to set the car. I followed him one night for many laps. We go down the backstretch. He jumps up off the guardrail. I jump up off the guardrail. Wherever his line was, I was right behind him.
Well, I tell you, you talk about Robert Cook, and when you say he knew Cedar Ridge, man, I'm going to tell you what. That guy, because I was racing with you guys. When y'all built those cars, I was right there, man. I had my car down there as well, and we run Cedar a lot that year. And I got to run against you guys. I was leading in a feature, and I guess we was like 2 or 3 laps in. We were leading in the feature, and we come in there, and I thought I was fat, doing great. Man, I was running the car, and I knew you guys had to start near the back that night. So I was like, well, heck yeah, man. I can get out. Maybe if I can get out, I can do something. I'll be daggum. I don't know where he come from. We come into turn 3, and next thing, he is all the way on the bottom, and I don't know where he come from. He passed me and just left me. I was like, where did he? And then I didn't know where he went. I was like, golly, he's so fast, But yeah, man, those cars, you guys had some really, really fast cars.
Yeah, I think Macy was mad at me that year.
I think you might have been a little bit.
Well, not just that. We was both battling for points,
Yep.
and Roger ended up selling the car. So, and me and him had some pretty tough battles that year.
Heck yeah. That's when he had it was the big white Impala, wasn't it? I think it was. He didn't go.
That was a Malibu, I
had
think.
the big Malibu. Yeah, the yellow one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Had that Dolphin on top.
Yeah.
Thing's still going.
It's still on there.
It's still going, man. But yeah, you guys, you really did, man. And talk about being with Roger and all them.
I've known Roger and David Dow, since we was all kids. Our mom and dads all hung out together. My dad, my uncle, Bob, and David and Roger's dad, they all played guitars and stuff together. So we all hung out when we was kids.
Jamming.
Yeah. We had to go outside, though. We couldn't stay in the house.
They let them jam. You had to go outside and play.
Yeah.
But, like I said, man, you guys had a lot of success together. And I think that's been one of the things across your career that's been a consistent thing is you've always been able to figure the car out and, just like you said, consistency. is a lot of what it takes. And you've always been, you know how to hit your marks, you know how to, because when you watch you race in a race, you're going to come through the corner the same way every time, unless something happens, you got to go high or low. You come through the same way every time. And I've seen you be out horsepowered. I mean, you know, you talk about coming back to the Rusty Boat class, took a little hiatus, you know, come back and run Rusty Boat. You know, your car didn't have, you know, a whole lot of gear in it, and you can kind of tell you get a slow start, but after a lap or so, you was right there in the race.
Yeah, it's all a matter of hitting the same line and, like you said, being consistent, you know, and staying with it.
Because I mean, and that's what it takes. And you know, and you weren't racing against any, you know, some shabby names. I mean, there were some pretty tough names in there as well, and they're very fast cars. But you were able to still just even if you came back from a lead, they had a lead on you. You chop that lead down every lap, and maybe you run out of laps, maybe you wouldn't, but you were right there at the end.
Yeah, back when I started, I'd have never dreamed I'd have been in a race car. Anybody that know me would just think, there ain't no way he drives a race car. But once I get in a race car and put them belts tight and put that helmet on, I know what my job is and just try to, you know, be a guy everybody, you know, wants to race against.
Right, and one thing I've noticed too, you know, in the pits, you can walk up to you, talk, you'll sit around, talk, do whatever. But I've always noticed whenever we'd get on the track, when you're in that race car, there ain't no head turned side. You don't look left. You don't look right. You're in pace laps, nothing like that. You're straight ahead the whole time. I pulled up beside you, and you know, and like it, you don't move that head. Never.
No, I'm pretty much focused.
That's it. And I've always noticed that about you, that you don't look, you don't do nothing when they're pace laps, anything like that. Sometimes you might put that hand out there and wave to the crowd. But other than that, you're straight on.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my game plan going. Where I'm gonna go. Is this guy in front of me gonna go when the green drops, or am I gonna have to dart to the bottom, or just try to stay clean and be there at the end?
Well, that was, man. Like I said, that's just always something that struck me about you. And like I said, I've known you for a long time, man, and that was one of the things that I always stood out. I was like, man, I pull up beside, and sometimes everybody will just kind of give him a little finger wave, say, okay, we're gonna go, let's have a good race. Don't nothing. Both hands on the steering wheel, and you're straight ahead every
time. A little
time.
Intimidation thing.
That's what it is. I was like, oh my God, he's serious, man. He don't even want to look at me. I better back off.
Yeah. You know, and a lot of people don't know either. Like I was saying earlier, I'd help anybody. Dwayne Richardson crashed a car out at Cedar leading the points. He was racing Windy Hollow and Cedar for points. And Robert Sosh was helping him at the time. That's when he was racing for Curtis Howard. Me and David Hare owned the car. And I shot the offer to David. I said, what do you think? I said, you know, we're just out here having fun, not being serious about it. Dwayne just crashed his car out. What do you think about letting him use the car? And, of course, I'm good buddies with Robert anyway.
Right.
So he said, yeah, let's do it. So I called Robert, and I said, this car's sitting here. If y'all need it, come and get it. He said, what? I said, yeah, it's just a race car. Me and Davey talked about it. You're more than welcome to use it. They came and got it. You know, he was able to run several races, and then he bought my brother's Monte Carlo, and he was able to get the championship done.
Right.
And I did Chad Boone the same way. I had a pure stock car. He crashed his car at Whitesville, throttle stuck on it. I told him, I said, a car's sitting there in the grass, come get it. Well, he thought I meant my old Thunderstock car, I guess, and called him a day or two later, said, you gonna come get this car? I said, it's a pure stock car, Curtis, run it, sitting there. You talking about the pure stock car? So needless to say, he come and got it.
I bet
and he finished. He won several features with it.
Right, and I remember, you know, before we take a break here, I want you to talk about that too. Back in the days, everybody be at Windy Hollow, you know, if we run dirt, and it would, you know, come heaven forbid it come a rain, you know. Well, I remember that one night in particular, everybody loaded up, bunch of people, and I bet there was 30 cars ended up over KMS that night. Just dirt tires, nobody changed a tire, a setup, a shock, nothing. And Boone went out there and qualified, and I'll be daggone if that throttle didn't say, man, I don't know how he was not seriously hurt, because it broke the wall. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, folded that car up, and that was a beautiful car.
Yeah.
And that was when he was in a hot battle with, I don't know if he was in battle with Clint that year or if he was in battle with Junior Horn.
Junior Horn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, man, they had a hot battle going. And, you know, neither one would give, and they both run up front all the time, but ended up, boy, it tore that car up.
Yeah.
That was a heck of a night right there. But, you know, it was crazy how people would do that, though, is just, you know, leave one track and say, well, hey, we got a race car. Let's go out to Whitesville.
Yep.
You're going to get into Windy next weekend anyway, so, you know, let's go to Whitesville. So they would do that, man, and it's just different. You know, it's different.
My brother lost the car the same way, too.
Oh, yeah?
They changed the carburetor. They took the dirt car to asphalt and put wheels and tires on it and did the same thing, the same exact corner that Chad did. And the throttle stuck, and he couldn't get it shut off. Chucked the axle out of it, and it trashed the car.
At Wall, it's very, very hard at Kentucky Motor Speedway.
Very.
No safer
Not forgiving
barriers
at all.
No, it is not. And there's no safer barrier. It's about like hitting those Uke tires down there at Cedar. Them things is just like hitting a brick wall, man. It'll tear your car up. I can tell you firsthand about that. Well, Mark, let's go ahead and take another break real quick, and we'll come back on the other side, and we'll get into a few more things here.
Sounds good.
Whether you're buying or selling a home, you want to ensure your needs are met. Lori Kimball with Home Realty Incorporated is the realtor for you. In today's fast-paced society, it's important to have someone on your side that will give you the care and treatment you deserve. Lori wants to build a relationship with you, and it's her full-service commitment focusing on your family's wants and needs that sets her head and shoulders above the rest. You can contact Lori today at 270-315-1468. That's 270-315-1468. Or you can find her on the web at www.lorikimball.com. Call her today to unlock doors for your tomorrow by building a relationship with a realtor who's here for you.
And we're back from that break, sitting here with Mark Stallings still here at Fairview IT Management. Again, you know, this is it's not Field Trip Friday like it normally is. We're back home here. Mark, glad you made the trip down here to sit with us. But one thing I want to ask you about before we move into some advice, you know, you think about your years around the racetracks and back when you was a kid all the way up to even now, you know, you might have somebody you like watching. But who are some of your favorite drivers over the years that you really looked up to and thought, man, those guys are it?
Man, there was quite a few. Back when, like I said, back when I started, the street stock was real huge. Ricky Estes, Ricky Rudd, Steve Everly, Broadway Gang. And anybody ever heard of Broadway Gang know who they were.
Oh, yeah.
They were McHenry drivers. Even though Carolyn Rose, she could wheel a dirt car. But yeah, them were some of my favorites. I used to like to watch Clint Colley. He could wheel a car real good. Bill Mormon can get around there. He started when I did. A lot of people don't know that. We started the same year and everything, never even knew each other. And then years went by, we all had one shop together out on 60. We called the Shack. Even Kenny Rudd was in there, Robert Sosh, and Marvin Jump. We had big time in there.
Well, you know, you mentioned some of those names, man, and again, just guys that have went on to have big-time success. You know, Clint, multi-time champion, Bill, multi-time champion. You look at what Ricky Estes was able to do in a car. Look at what Tricky Ricky Rudd has been able to do in a car. Still, to this day, any of them guys could step behind that wheel and flat get it done. And you know, old school, new school, it didn't matter, you know, and those guys.
Jimmy and Randy Westfield. I mean, I could go on all night long. There's a bunch of guys back in the day that could wheel it and could still wheel it today, I'm sure.
Yeah, and, you know, they were a pleasure to watch, man. That was the cool part about it, is guys like that. And I think that's lost on some of these guys today that maybe not, you know, Ricky doesn't drive a whole lot anymore, Ricky Rudd. But, man, when he does, people need to pay attention.
Yeah, you know when he's in a car.
Yeah, you know, a little different driving style than Carson's got, but it kind of shows through a little bit. But you were talking about that old car you used to drive, of Roger Dow's car, and you know, Ricky's got that car now, and was able he and Brian the Builder, Brian Hired, run side by side for almost 50 laps at Windy Hollow and Enduro one night. Nobody'd give an inch. And them guys were bumper to bumper, door to door, the entire time, never touched, not one time. and put on one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Can you imagine having an old school race with all of us old guys out there together? That would be a show.
That would absolutely be a show.
You'd have to have a main, a B main, a C main, because there's so many of us out there, that started early, and a lot of them are still racing.
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool.
I think that would be a very, very good idea. And I think that's something that, you bringing that up, I hope we can get the right people to hear that.
Oh, I'm sure somebody will hear it.
Well, but
pass
who
it on.
wouldn't?
You know how racing is. One guy catches a rumor of something, and the whole
Everybody
racing
knows.
community knows about it within minutes or hours.
Well, and how that happens, and we'll roll into that. A lot of times these days it's different. Is like tell a phone, tell a friend, tell a racer, the way it used to be. But we got this little thing called Facebook now, and I know you're familiar with that, and Twitter and Instagram and things like that. But we think about social media and racing, and what's your take on that these days? I mean, it's a lot different way back when we barely had a cell phone that would even text.
Yeah, I think. Excuse me. Social media can be good and can be bad. If a guy doesn't take offense very well and he reads something on social media about the way he's driving or putting him down or something, that's gonna put a damper on the social part of it, going to the track and being in the pits. You're gonna confine to yourself and just try to stay away from the drama and do your thing and have a good time.
Right.
But there and again, social media also, you get a positive. Somebody say, "Hey man, you did a great job tonight. I like watching you race.
Right.
I come just to watch you. You put on a good show."
You're right. It could go either way, and I think where we lose that line is, one side of that good part is somebody. You see how quick people are, or not very quick. Somebody to maybe give a compliment, but golly, boy, they can't. They'll break their fingers trying to put something negative on social media these days. It seems like fans are trying to run down a track, a driver.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the pluses back in the day. If you had a problem at the track that night, you had all week to, just let it go.
Right.
We'll go back next week and we'll make it right. And you could walk in the guy's pit, say, "Hey man, last week was a bad deal. Things went wrong. Let's dust it off and go on and have a good time with it."
Right.
But now with social media, they just keep it going all week long, and then it just builds up, and it makes it worse.
Yeah, by the time you get to the track at next weekend, man, I mean,
now it's a
festered
big
so bad,
grudge thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And it's not. And I think where we lose the disconnect there is it's not just the racers. I mean, we have proven for years that we can work something out. It might take a week, or we might have to work it out on the racetrack. You just never know how to fare out. But we as drivers can handle it. And I think where you get the families and the friends and the crew members that you didn't, the fans that you didn't even know you had, never met this person in your life, get in there and talking on behalf of you. And I think that's where we've got to be very, very careful.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I've been guilty of it myself. I've done it before, but I've also, for instance, one instance, me and Fuzzy got into it. He was having brake issues on his car, and he bumped me in the corner and spun me out. Well, Josh James took a picture of it and posted it on his page or whatever, and Fuzzy called me during the week and apologized. I said, "Well, it takes a big man to apologize. It's all good, it's in the past. Let's move on and race on with it."
Right. And that's important sometimes, and that's where picture told you everything you needed to know, but then again, it could have been one of those things where maybe you didn't know. Maybe there wasn't a picture. Yeah. And then somebody affiliated with somebody said this, and it got back to that guy. And just like we said, man, you start one rumor and something, well, it'll spread. Yep. Through a grandstand or through, a pit area. But, just like you said, are we missing out a little bit on that social interaction, and we call it social media, and people have friends that, heck, I don't know half of them anyway. But, being in those pits or being in those grandstands sometimes, I think you miss out a lot on being able to talk to people that just like, for instance, if you were in the pits, look at all the stuff, and we're laying a lot of it down here today, but look at all the stuff you could tell somebody, or, back, this worked for me back when. See if you tried to see if it works for you, same type of car. I think you miss out on a lot of that stuff if people just don't talk to each other.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we was talking about earlier. The camaraderie, or whatever the word I'm looking for, is just, it's not the same. And that's my opinion. Somebody else may have a different opinion on it. I'm just an old...
just an old...
I don't want to say retired,
no,
because, a guy never actually really retires. No. But that's just my outlook on it. I mean, that's what I enjoyed back in the day when I started racing is, everybody could cut up in the pits and we'd all have a large time, go home, come back next week and do it all over again.
Right. With different stories and stuff that happened during the week,
Yeah.
Well, you said that a little bit ago, and you took a little bit of a break. Last time you ran Cruiser, the old school Cruiser, and then you came back and ran Rusty Bolt a little bit. And like I said, there was a different, time frame there. But how do you feel that it was, like you said, how was it different? Like, how did it feel coming back after a break where you didn't really hang out as much?
There wasn't a... it's just kind of hard to explain. I just noticed, price-wise, the cost of living and the cost of things has gone way up compared to when I raced in, I think, 2005, when I had me and Davey had our own car.
All right. It's
just unreal. I mean, just to change oil in a car now, and all I owned was the engine. I drove for somebody, so...
Right. And that is true, and I think that we're progressing into a time where I think we ought to start looking at ways to save money instead of ways to spend it.
Yeah.
Because I think we're going to get into a ditch there, and after talking about social media, we'd always do something here called the State of Racing, and you've been in racing, and we talk about the good old days, and back in the late 90s and early 2000s when we were all racing consistently, and how it was then, how it is now. I mean, how do you view racing now? I know you don't get to go out there as much. I know your son goes a lot, but you don't get to go as much as you used to. But how do you view it based on how it used to be versus now? I mean, what's your view? Are we on a right track? Are we going upwards? Are we in a decline, or how do you see it?
Well, I mean, the crowd count's still there. I mean, they're still drawing a good crowd. From what I've seen in pits, they're still drawing some good cars, but I think there's some things that could change rules-wise in some classes. But like I said, that's my opinion. I'm not a full-time racer and don't have a dog in the fight, but there's things that can make it a little more cost efficiently, I think, make a low budget guy be able to enjoy it,
Yeah. And well, to that point though, is like, you don't have a dog in the fight, and you're not a full-time racer, but say a guy like Mark Stallings wanted to get back into racing, been out a little while, but wanted to get back into racing, I think it's important to keep it to where you could come back and afford to do it anymore. You know what I mean? And that's where it pushes a lot of guys out.
Yeah. I'd like to see the old bomber class like the cruisers used to be, like we was talking about earlier.
Just take them down, and not a whole hell of a lot of rules on them, but to make it a class where people can get out there and have some fun. You know what I mean, and not have to worry about those dollars mounting up on them.
Yeah. I mean, because you could take a stock bore motor, and even if you bored at 30, but run stock heads and limited slip, put them on 70 or 75 series tires and highway gear, and like I said earlier, see who the driver is.
Build that class. I think we would figure out who could drive and who might not could drive as well.
I always like to dry slick track.
I do too. I do like a good black slick, right? And I always wanted to run right after the modifieds.
Yeah.
They lay that rubber down, and because those DOT tires, I mean, they did well on something like that. Made to run on the highway, so when it gets, the harder the track gets, man, the more they would run. And man, I tell you, thinking back on some of those times where those tracks would get that way, and of course they'd have the nights where it'd be super dusty, or the nights would be super wet after it rained all week and they'd water the track. But man, it just seemed like the racing just came alive.
Yeah, it was. He was talking about the dry slick part of it. It was always pretty cool to sit in the stands when you wasn't driving and hear your cars go in the corner and hear tires squealing. You just
on a dirt track.
Dirt track.
That's right. This ain't asphalt, man. What are they doing out there? But but that was what it was. Those cars. You knew those guys were driving those cars because, man, the harder they drive, the louder they bark going in them corners. And it was a lot of fun, man. It really was.
Oh yeah, you put 20-some cars in a field like that. My wife she was always a nervous wreck.
Ain't they though? I mean, that's the way. My wife's the same way these days, and she doesn't. And I always tell her, I'm I'm not worried about me. That's not who I'm worried about. I'm worried about the other guys because you never know what they're going to do, and you just never know how it's going to stack up. What do you think? Being that we've tipped that scale a little bit, and you put your promoter hat on, you take your driver hat off, put your promoter hat on, and what's some of the other things? Just like what you were talking about, is maybe it's taking some of these classes back a little bit, because I think it's a cycle. We'll always see a class get a little more, and then it's like it goes, and then it just turns around to where we got to start up another beginner class and then start moving it forward. But what do you think? What would you like to see going forward in racing?
Well, basically what we just hit on as far as even the mini stocks. I mean, them guys are flying now.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, it's just like we started when we was racing. You find something, and you find something else, and eventually everybody finds it, and it just gets faster and faster. I don't really know what the answer is, but you just like to see a guy that's never raced before be able to build a car and come out. I mean, just look at the enduro class he's running.
Mm-hmm.
Start a class like that.
Yeah, just kind of bone stock type.
Yeah.
Type cars, rollover bar and like.
But I'm sure insurance might have something to do with that too.
Yeah, it's absolutely But that's when we think about the cruiser class. Now we talk about that, and you guys got to race in that just right when it started. But I mean, had a rollover bar in it, maybe a 4-point.
Well, our enduro car had a factory bench seat with factory seat belts in it.
That's what I was getting ready. Yeah, the old factory seats.
Yeah, it had the interior doors, the panels still in it, with big couch cushions in between the seat.
It's instead of we're not gonna put a door plate on. We're gonna put a
rollover
couch cushion
bar,
there.
and that was it.
and you know what? Stock wheels.
Yeah.
Stock steel wheels. I guess we had 1-inch lug nuts. I don't remember. I think we
yeah,
did.
I think we
had to have that.
Yeah.
But, stock cars. I think you could take the wheel wells out of the front, but no gut in the thing. And you talk about how, it wasn't nothing. I mean, and you had Tommy Brown and Ronnie Fowlway and Shane and Misty and you and Curtis was there at one point, and then Ricky Rudd was in it, and everybody got in it, and it was a huge class, and it didn't cost a lot, and of course it got a little faster and a little faster every year, but it didn't cost a lot and put on one heck of a show.
Oh yeah, on a given night, 20, 25, A main, B main. You had to race your way in.
Yep.
And then if you did get an A main, it was a show. I mean, and that's what people paid to see.
That's right.
They was going to have a good field of cars, and of course, most fans want to see a crash. But
yeah, that's true. They do. But but that's the thing though, is everybody seemed like could race, and man, if they were 3 wide in the corner, they'd come out 3 wide in the corner, and they'd figure it out down the back straightaway or something. And didn't nobody taking it through the cornfield and somebody flipping somebody over. It happened, It obviously did happen, but most of the time it was really, really clean racing. And I think that's what a lot of people need to realize these days. And I know we don't quite have the car count that we did, but I kind of think we're on a resurgence a little bit. But I don't know if there's anything these tracks can do to help it, or if it's going to have to be the racers to try to change the tide, or how it needs to go.
Yeah, I hate to keep saying it, but the cost of everything just keeps going up, and cost of living keeps going up, and wages aren't going to cover it, and it's just makes it hard.
Right, and you talked about a little bit ago, buying 4 tires for $100.
Yeah, you can't do that.
No,
anymore.
you can't buy a tire for $150
No.
now. And I think that's where one of those things is. I don't know that we can control cost of tires. Is guys these days running Hoosier tires, kind of getting them used and things like that, and that helps. Buying them $15-$20 a tire. But I think that's one of those things where roll bar tubing. I mean, buy it for a 21-foot stick, $10. I mean, you can build a whole roll cage for $300 or $400 now. I mean, it ain't nothing to have $2,000 in a roll cage.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Wheels and tires going up. I mean, and you're right. Cost of oil. I mean, you guys, it depending on what kind of oil. Even if you're running the Walmart oil, man, is $30.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really one of those things where some of that stuff we can't control. Steel and rubber and oil and fuel. I mean, fuel's through the roof. But I think you're right, though. If there's ways that we can cut costs on having to build these big motors to run up front, or having to, so you need an aftermarket set of heads. Why can't we just run a stock cast iron set of heads? Why can't you run a cast iron intake? I think you're on the right track there.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the way it worked years ago. I mean, that's all I ever ran. And a lot of people didn't believe it, but it was just clean and refreshed and put back together.
Some of them had to pay to find out.
Yeah,
they did.
more than they wanted to.
Well, yeah, that's right. And we're disappointed after the fact.
I ain't gonna lie, I hated losing it. It wasn't nothing special, but it was durable. It lasted.
Got the job done.
Yeah, run many enduros. Didn't have to take it apart very much.
I bet it's gone now. I don't know. We probably need to find. We need to go try to find it somewhere.
It's probably laying in a corner somewhere.
We get Mark back in a race car. Back out of the old. One thing I want you to touch on before we get out of here in a few minutes. Think about your years over the racing, and you've learned so much, and you had to learn on the fly. And what advice? We got these kids, and I think that's one thing we need to try to do is pander to these kids, try to get them into racing. No matter what kind of sport that is, whether it's drag racing, stock car racing, go-karts, soapbox derby, whatever you have, what kind of advice would you give somebody, one of these kids wants to get into racing but doesn't quite know what they need to do, some of the things that they can really help them along the way?
Well, you'd want to try to get them go to the racetrack, try to meet different people in the pits, depending on what class you want to start out in. I would start out in a lower class myself, say the bomber class, and just try to walk around some of the bomber guys and get some, like the older guys. It's Donnie Fair, Bill Mormon. I'm sure them guys would offer some kind of advice to help you get started, and then just, don't try to lead the first lap when you go out. Just be patient, learn one lap at a time, and try to go faster each lap, but don't overdo it, Right.
Well,
like I said, back in the day, it was go or get run over when I started.
So Mark had to go.
Yeah.
He's like, I better get on out of here. But no, you're right. I think that it's important to learn as you go, but to start out, we talked about that with Kenny Wallace, the old interview with him. Start out on a class you can afford.
Right.
Don't try to get in over your head.
That's the big thing.
Because you're not going to be a racer long.
Yeah, start something you can be comfortable with.
Right.
And just have fun with it. Fun is a big word. And that, like I said earlier, a lot of us racers over the years have lost that.
Right.
What racing's supposed to be is fun.
Not beat your head against the wall, not throw every dime you got, just mortgage your house and all that stuff. It ain't about
You're
that.
not going to get rich on it, that's for sure.
Oh, you're not. Junior Johnson always said if you want to make a little money in racing, or if you want to make a little fortune in racing, start with a big one.
That's
and
right.
That's right. It'll take every bit of and people don't understand that too. Is it does take a lot of time, and it takes a lot of perseverance to get out there, and you got to want to work on them. If you're going to spend that kind of money on them, you got to take care of it. And going out there and crashing into people and crashing up the wall and everything, you ain't going to have your race car long.
Yeah,
and
you'll learn real quick.
They don't last. They don't last doing that. But, well, Mark, buddy, I can't tell you how it's been a lot of fun. We ain't sat down and talked for a long, long time, and it's been just a blast. I think you got more in you, more stories, and I think you'll remember them as soon as you leave here. I know.
Oh, I'm sure I will. I thought of some while ago and forgot about them already.
Well, that's
but it's a plus. I enjoy talking about old times. I've got a lot of memories with it, and I enjoyed it. Had a big time with it. Made a lot of friends and a lot of enemies and
a lot of frenemies.
Yeah.
I think you and me run afoul of each other before, heck, but that's the thing is the beautiful part about it is this is what binds us together, you know what I mean? And there ain't a time when somebody, you might be the closest friends now, I joked about it with Jeff Macy. Me and that guy couldn't stand each other at one point. And I don't know what it is. I love talking to Jeff, and Jeff's so funny, and he comes up with crazy stuff. And same thing with Bill Mormon, and me and Bill's never really been at odds, but I've raced against Bill, and I always know Bill was one of the gold standards, and that's the thing is I always try to learn from them guys, but don't. And sometimes you're going to get into it. You just will. Yeah. It's just part of it. But I think it's important to remember who we are and where we came from, and don't let that cloud our judgment. End up somebody hurt or somebody really get his head broke or something, because that's not what it's about. It's about having fun. And if you can't, and you talked about the Best brothers, I run afoul of them one night, and it was not pretty. And I had to be the bigger man. The next week, had to keep me festered all week, didn't say nothing to each other. I come out there and was able to go up and talk to them. I said, I stood at their pit, and I said, hey, guys, can I come talk to you? And they said, come on over, sit down. And we talked about it. I mean, and those guys right there is one about everything there is to win. And some things they wasn't even involved in, they won. I mean, it was crazy. But super cool. We were able to talk it out. And I love talking to Harry Best, and that's one of the things.
He's a nice guy you ever meet.
And can drive a race car. Goodness.
Him and Barry both good.
Absolutely. Barry was very, very tough. And asphalt or dirt, it didn't matter. Them guys were going, and it was cool. But again, Mark, I appreciate you coming on, man, and it's been a lot of fun. And I think you got a part 2 in you. And if you ever want to come back, you're always welcome to come back and sit in with us and maybe sit around and jaw with whoever we got on here, and maybe we'll kick a story out or two of them that they didn't think they knew.
Sounds good. I believe if you get a few of us together, ain't no telling what you might hear.
Well, the good thing about it is it's normally a family show, but we don't have any censors here, so if it gets off in the ditch, it's okay. It don't bother us none. So, but again, Mark, appreciate you coming on, man, and it's been a heck of a time, and we hope you come back soon.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Like I said, it's good to talk about old memories. I've had a whole lot of fun with it, and enjoyed the show being on here.
All right. Well, we're going to take one more break here. We're going to come back at the after the break. Excuse me, if I can even start talking again, but and we'll close this episode out.
You know Fairview IT Management is your one-stop shop for all your home computing needs. But did you know they are also one of Owensboro's leading business automation services? Offering network automation, system administration, and remote managed support. Fairview IT Management can become your help desk to help you reduce staffing costs and keep your bottom line low. Give Gabriel Kirtley a call at 270-228-4339 for all your business technology needs.
And we're back from the break, man. What a great episode with Mark, and we can't thank him enough for coming on here and sharing some of those old school stories. We told you it was going to be cool, man, right from the start. And if it wasn't cool for you, man, it was cool for me, and that's all right. You know what I mean? And knowing Mark personally like I do, and having been on the track with him, and I knew we would get some good stuff out of him. And just like I said, hey, this can be part 1, because I think he's got a lot more stories, and he agreed. And some of them he even forgot. So I think that's important that we get him back on as soon as we can, and that way he can tell us some more of those stories.
No, I'm excited about it. And, we say it a lot that we want the guests to come back multiple times, and it's true. We want them to come back and tell us how their season's going, or tell us how their retirement's going, or whatever.
Don't call it a comeback.
Nope, don't do that. But we just have a great time, and talking to the racers and everyone. It's just the best place to be. There's nowhere else I'd want to be right now.
It's been good, man. And that's like I said. We got to talk to Donnie a couple of weeks ago, Donnie Fair, and talking to Mark. These guys that I've seen race since I started. And they were around there and putting on a great show for the fans, and still doing that sometimes these days. I wish Mark was able to get back in a race car right now, man, because I'd love to see him drive again. And he brought up a good point, man. And that is a great point. The old school guys, just a race don't have to be a 20-lap feature or nothing. Be a 10-lap race. Just let them get out there and have some fun in some cars, man. I think that would be Kentucky Motor Speedway used to have the Night of NASCAR Stars. I talk about that all the time. But why can't we have, at these places, including Kentucky Motor Speedway, have a night of local guys, you know what I mean, or local stars, and some guys that maybe have moved on from racing full time or haven't drove in a number of years, and get them back out there. I'd love to see Paul Dornberg back out there, man. Wouldn't that be cool? And Willie Hudson, and guys that did battle out there, Frankie Bartlett, and all kinds of guys. I think that would be so cool to see. And same thing on the dirt. Get some of the guys, even Ricky drives ever so often, Ricky Rudd, but get Ricky Estes and Ricky Rudd and Bill Mormon and Mark and Curtis and a bunch of people out there and have one heck of a show. Clint Cawley.
I mean, if it's an exhibition race, throw Jimmy and Randy in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
They paved the way for a lot of young racers, and we can't do what we're doing now without these guys. Just like I said at the beginning, without their struggles back in the day, we wouldn't be able to do the good stuff that we do today.
That's right, man. And who would ever thought, we'd be sitting here doing podcasts, and I know. People are nostalgic for things, and I like old school stuff from back in the 80s and the 90s and stuff like that. But I think that's old school is in.
Mm-hmm.
There's a crazy way to say it like that, but people's clamoring for the old school stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And new school's cool. That seems like that rhymes. But old school stuff is awesome. And being able to revisit maybe a few memories just one more time, or things like that, it's priceless. And I think that's I think that's something that's lost a lot of times on people, that they don't understand and how cool that is. Being able to hear these stories again, people can write books and they can write essays and type it all out and what have you, but hearing it from somebody who lived it is so much cooler. Well, I feel that way.
I think somebody wrote a song where they say should have seen it in color.
Absolutely. Instead of just black and white, man, because it's something. And, that applies to a lot of things. And racing's certainly one of those things. And it's a cool deal, man. And again, we thank Mark for coming on and sharing some of the stories. And I want to have him back on soon to kind of fill in some more blanks, I mean, there's some stuff he'll probably go home and lay down in bed tonight and think about,
Probably.
And say, man, I wish I'd have talked about that. That'd be cool. So, and love to get, Stallings Brothers Racing, I mean, he and Curtis and even Curtis Lee, a whole family full of racers, and let them sit there and spin yarns on each other and tell tales, and you never know what might come out.
Just got to get those schedules worked out.
I know it, man. That's the big thing about podcasting, guys, is scheduling and having to call people out of the blue and stuff like that, which I don't mind to do it, don't mind it at all to do it. But you guys can help us out. And how you can do that is if you can contact us and tell us who you want to hear, tell us how how you wanted to get it done, and put us in contact with them. If we haven't contacted them yet and you want to hear them and you're clamoring to hear those stories, put us in contact with them. Talk to them, tell them to contact us if need be. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to hear, and I think it's important that we do that. So, you guys contact us and tell us what you like, what you don't like. I mean, heck, we're 30-some-odd episodes in. We're no strangers to this stuff, and you ain't going to hurt our feelings. And it can only get better from here. I truly believe that. Not that we're not putting out awesome content out right now, because we are. We're doing a heck of a job, I think.
And I will say, and I'm not opening this up for a debate or a challenge from anyone in the internet world, but there has been talk here recently of other people wanting to create podcasts about racing in Western Kentucky and the surrounding area. And welcome to the game, guys. There's plenty of room for all of us, and you're going to have a different perspective and a different viewpoint than we have. You're going to have a different format than we have. You're going to have different guests than we have. Or if our guests overlap, fantastic. We welcome you to this arena. It's only going to benefit all of us and the community.
Welcome to Thunderdome.
Well,
not like quite.
I mean,
it's not like that, guys. But no, that's the thing. People want to.
It might be though.
Yeah, that's true. We'll depend. Let's see how it goes.
Right.
But that's the thing. We've been doing this for close to a year now, and man, we have been having a good time. And I can't help think that we're not the first ones to do this.
No, not
and
at
we ain't
all.
going to be the last ones to do it. And if people want to do that from our area, we'd love to help you out a little ways. See if you've got questions and things like that, and we wouldn't mind to help out with your show, because here's the thing, everybody has a place, here, and I don't think that we're too big for everybody. That don't invade our space, whatever. It's not like that. If you want to create your own podcast, maybe you've got some views that we don't have. That's the beauty of everybody being their own individual person, is maybe you can come out, you might have a different format, you might have a different way of going about it, and that's cool. And that's we do what we do, you do what you do, and we can. I full well believe that we can support each other, support another podcast, support another radio show, anything like that. It just makes racing better, guys. Listen, it's not a competition. It's not a damn competition.
Never has been.
But it's not, and it can only make it better. And I feel that. And if we keep getting racing out there in the public, it's going to stay out in the public eye, and people are going to notice it, and people are going to help it, and that's a good thing.
Agreed, 100%.
Right. So but what we are going to do is help our sponsors out. So we'd like to thank Mach 5 Race Cars Parts and Carts, Fairview IT Management, Martin Stowing Recovery, Chad's Barbershop, Glenstone Construction, Slingshot Media, Red Star Graphics, and our podcast sponsors,
Which are Lori Kimball with Home Realty Incorporated, High Octane Wraps and Apparel, and Willie's Carb and Dino Shop.
Right. And if you want to find us online, you can find us on Facebook, Conway Racing Team, the Bent Fender Podcast, Bluegrass Motorsports Media, Hot Laps with Blake Smith. You can also find us on Twitter at Conway Race Team, Instagram Conway Racing, www.conwayracingteam.com, also the BentFenderPodcast.com. If you would like to find us on the podcast consumable sites, you can do so at iTunes, Google Play, Podcast Addict, Podbean.com, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, YouTube, Overcast, Radio Public, iHeartRadio. If you can't find it, I don't know what you're doing with your life.
I mean, I can print out a transcript and mail it to you if you need me.
That's right. And if you
do
need help finding the podcast, which you're listening to this, so I'm not sure if maybe somebody hooked it up for you, but if you're having a hard time finding it, contact us. Let us know. We'll get you set up on it. It don't take no time.
Nope.
So it's faster than you'd think. Now, man, again, we mentioned some of those dates coming up. October 21st is the next one. That's the Halloween 200, the 30th annual Halloween 200 at Salem Speedway in Salem, Indiana. Go up there and support that beautiful racing facility and all the local drivers that's going to be competing in the big Halloween Classic, the Street Stock Classic, the 200-lap Enduro, as they call it. Don't call it a comeback. I don't know. That doesn't apply here. But don't call it an Enduro. Just call it a 200-lap race.
Yep.
That's right. Also, October the 28th, we've got the
Halloween 150 at the Hollow.
Right. It's coming up Windy Hollow Speedway. Also, that night is the Bluegrass 125, 125-lap Enduro race at Kentucky Motor Speedway. So get out there and check both of those out. Cedar Ridge Speedway off that weekend, correct? I think their last points race is coming up the 20th. I think this is the last night of points there. They're off one weekend after that, and then they're back for their Enduro on November the 3rd. And speaking of November the 3rd, you want to get down also to the Owensboro Speedseum, downtown Owensboro, West 2nd Street, or it's actually East 2nd Street, excuse me, right next to the courthouse. It won't be open, so what are you doing at the courthouse? We won't be asking you that. What are you doing at the Speedseum is watching the Kentucky Motorsports Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and right after that, there will be a huge announcement involving motorsports in Kentucky, especially Owensboro, Davis County.
Yep.
It's going to be a big deal. You don't want to miss it, and you're going to want to be a part of it after the fact. So don't miss out on that. Make sure you're down there. Make sure you're down there for the inaugural episode of Hot Laps with Blake Smith. It's going to be going on live from the Owensboro Speedseum during the Kentucky Motorsports Hall of Fame. You can follow all of that live on Bluegrass Motorsports Media, Hot Laps with Blake Smith, the Bent Fender Podcast. It's going to be damn near everywhere. So make sure you do that. Go down there and support it. Get down there and just take your kids. Take your wives. Take your girlfriends. I mean, don't let everybody see them. Don't take them both together. That's going to be trouble. So
Might be.
you better not do that. So, guys, get down there and support that. Support everybody. Support our local racetracks, whether it be Clarksville, Cedar Ridge, Windy Hollow Speedway, Western Kentucky Speedway, Clarksville Speedway. I mean, that's what Rockport Raceway. They're all running around here. I mean, get out and support your local racetrack. You spend your racing dollar on their admission prices and their concession stands.
Agreed.
That helps them out. So anyway, I think we've covered everything. We appreciate everybody being a part of this podcast. We appreciate Mark Stallings coming on today. It was an awesome episode as always, and can't wait till he comes back and shares a few more stories with us. Blake, have we covered? Blake. Hey, Blake. No, Blake can't hear me. Hey, Blake. No, he's not here. But I'll ask Wes. Did we cover everything?
I believe we did.
We did. That's right. So make sure you tune into all of that. I know we've thrown a lot at you, and support all kinds of various accoutrements when it comes to local racing. And thank you for supporting our episode, that's for sure. And if you need to, if you'd like to support more and want to sponsor us, we can tell you how to do that as well. So it's good stuff. So anyway, better get out of here.
Yep.
Wes, Detroit Iron Lou Allen, Nathan Pork Chop Conway, and we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the best up-and-coming motorsports podcast on the internet. Tune in next week to see who we're trading paint with on the Bent Fender Podcast.